Today I'm going to answer some important questions like, what does the weight of a fly rod mean? And what is the best weight fly rod for trout? And if you stick to the end of the video, I'm actually going to drop a bombshell tip for you that I wish I knew when I started out. When you're getting into fly fishing, it can get kind of confusing because the rods are different. You're not using lures and worms and bobbers, and then you got all these weights you got to worry about, like 3-weight rods all the way 9-weight rods and everything in between. First, I'm going to tell you the best weight fly rod for trout, and then in a minute we'll talk about what does the weight of a fly rod mean. And when you get out on the rivers, the typical weights you're going to see is 3 to 7 weights and anywhere in between. Now, my personal opinion on 7 weights is a bit overkill. 7 weights are, I find, better for bass. I've even heard of people landing pike on them, so I don't personally bring a 7 weight to the river. Moving on down to number 6, I've definitely brought plenty of number 6 weights down to the river. 6 weights are great. I find they're awesome for swinging streamers. If you got a heavy streamer on there, 6 weights are fantastic for it. That's a 6 weight right there. I've only used it once so far, but I threw some streamers on there and it slayed them. Going down to 5 weights is what I would consider like the happy medium. You could still kind of swing some heavy streamers and it's still light enough to feel a good fight on the fish, but your rod's getting more malleable at this point, and so you can just feel that fight a little bit better. Also gives you a lot of pop to the cast. Now, the last rod I was using earlier this year was a 4-weight, and so far that was my favorite rod to bring to the river. It's gonna catch you pretty much all the fish in the river. It's not technically suitable for bigger trout, but it pretty much is. Now, I was just using a 4-weight earlier this year, and so far that's my favorite. Had a lot of pop to the cast. I could really feel the fish when I was fighting them, but I didn't feel like the rod was gonna snap or anything like that. 4 weights, you could still catch the bigger end fish, and you still feel a good fight with the smaller dinker type fish. And then there's 3-weight, which I've never personally used. I'm actually gonna get a 3-weight. I've heard they're fantastic. Lots of malleability to the cast, meaning the rod bends a lot. The more the rod bends during a cast, the more pop you have. You always hear me say more pop to the cast. I think I'm gonna pick up a 3-weight as my next rod and try that sucker out. But I hope this kind of answers your question. I hope this gives you a better understanding of what fly rod for trout. And I hope this gives you a better understanding so that you can pick your rod. To answer the question of what does the weight of the fly rod mean is pretty simple. The weight is basically the stiffness of the spine. Heavier weights are stiffer. And the reason being, generally when you go stiffer, you're gonna be throwing heavier objects. So the heavier objects that you're casting are gonna need a stiffer rod. I'm not gonna go put a big old heavy ocean fly on my 3-weight, you know? That's a good way to damage your rod over time. With fly rod spine, it's really all about finding what fits for what you're throwing. So if you're throwing big streamers, it's probably not a good idea to take your 3-weight. You're gonna just struggle really hard with casting that sucker. Now, the pro tip I talked about. This is really cool because it'll help you cast farther. But first, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Give this video a thumbs up if you got some real value out of it. It really does help the channel. Thank you. The pro tip I was telling you about to be able to cast farther is pretty cool. Sometimes you want heavier line on your rod. So for instance, I rock a 5-weight with the Cabela's RLS Plus reel and 5-weight line. When I dropped down to a 4-weight, I took the reel in that line and I stuck it on the 4-weight. The heavier line actually helps your rod get more pop to the cast, which allows you to cast farther. I've used that tactic on 4-weights, 5-weights, and 6-weights. It's a really good way to add a pop to your cast and add a good 5 feet. It can make a huge difference in the long run. Hey, if you want more awesome fly fishing tips just like this, click this video right now. I'll see you next time. Bum bum ba!